Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kristian Roberts. I'm the Director of Education for the Dallas Opera. I'm here with my fabulous colleague,
Quo Johnson, Education and Company Culture Manager for the Dallas Opera.
and we're back yet again with another episode of Taking the Stage with Kristian
and Quo. One thing that we've started doing and that we will continue to do, because it is important in the work that we do individually and the work that we do for our communities and in the work that we do as a community, is ensuring that we do a land and people acknowledgement. So I do want to acknowledge that here in Dallas, which is where we are on stolen land. This is the land of the Caddo, of the Wichita, and of the Comanche sovereign nations who were removed forcefully from their homes so that others can come in and settle into this land and claim it as their own. We always want to take the time to acknowledge the harm that comes from this. And then we also want to take the time to acknowledge the people who were stolen from their homes and brought here and forced into labor and enslaved so that Dallas could be built with stolen labor. Dallas is not unique in this. This goes across the entire nation. We also want to acknowledge what it means as we have those of various nations, sovereign nations, who do not have access to internet. So I always want to take the time to do both a land and people acknowledgement, to acknowledge that while those who are here now did not create these conditions, we do have the opportunity, we have the honor, we have the responsibility to come together so that we can work to reduce that harm and create greater connection through human decency and acknowledging the humanity of others. So thank you for joining me in this land and people acknowledgement.
and thank you for joining us today. We always want to give a shout out to our audience. Thank you so much for continuing to tune in. We realize that we cover heavy subjects and sometimes they may be hard pills to swallow, but you come back week after week and it is so very appreciated. We also want to thank the Dallas Opera, of course, TDO Network, David Lomeli's brainchild. We very much appreciate this opportunity and this platform. He's going to get sick of us talking about him.
Hey,
but anyway, hey, David. But anyway, so Quo, we have a guest today who I have read some fabulous things about, but you know, there's nothing like getting together with folks and being in conversation with them. So please introduce our guest.
Absolutely. So I'm going to introduce him, but I'm going to let him speak because that's what for himself, because that's what he can do. We are joined by Frankie Garcia III, wonderful, amazing community activist, artist, just beautiful soul, all those things wrapped into one in the work that he does for the community here in Dallas, but also just here in Texas as well. And then the way in which he extends his work through art as an artist and as an entrepreneur. So Frankie, if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and what you want to share with the Taking the Stage community.
Yeah, my name is Frankie Garcia III, and I am owner of FGIII Fine Art Productions. So we are a production company. We term ourselves professional art partners, and that's kind of the easiest way to introduce ourselves to other artists in the community. But I'm from Dallas, Texas. I grew up in Oak Cliff and went to school in Oak Cliff. My office now is in Oak Cliff off Oak Cliff Boulevard in Clarendon. It's literally my stomping ground. I grew up on these streets, and for a long time while I was growing up, I wanted to get out of Oak Cliff. It was just like, man, I can't wait to get out of the hood. You know, this is the 80s and the 90s, so it was tough. I just can't wait to get out of here. All we knew was Loop 12 and I-30. That's it. That was my world, and I wanted to see the rest of it. And so I graduated I went to high school at Kimball, graduated from Seagoville, and I left. I went to Lewisville, Texas, and I got married to a sweetheart, and I moved away. And it's so weird how Oak Cliff just kept dragging me back and pulled me back. And here I am, my office, our headquarters is right here in the heart and the thick of it all again. So I'm grateful for that, because I'm able to relate to the community, and that's what's really important in my career, is being able to relate to our underserved communities. I'm one of them. I come from that atmosphere, so that relation is important to me, and I make sure that, you know, while I'm here in the neighborhood, not only am I active, but I eat lunch in the neighborhood. I take my car to get fixed in the neighborhood. My parents live in the neighborhood. If I work with kids, they either go to Sunset or they go to Kimball or they go to, you know, somewhere here in the neighborhood. And that keeps me alert. It keeps me like they're the boots on the ground. So they're going through what I was going through. It's just a different time period. So they're educating me on some of the challenges. And I take those to heart because that it helps me in my business as a businessman. People ask me all the time, did you go to college to learn the things you do? I didn't go to college. I barely made it through high school. But I can tell you that most of the things that I use as tools in a meeting or in business come from the streets. They really do. Profiling, understanding how people are reacting with their gestures or facial or comments. That's all stuff I learned naturally on the street that at the time, you know, was protecting myself, knowing my environment, where I could go, where I couldn't go, meeting people for the first time. In the hood, it wasn't like, oh, hey, how you doing? It was like, where are you from? Like, where do you go to school? So everything was a challenge. Like there was fear behind it. So you take that factor away and you meet people in the business world, and it makes it easier for me to immediately engage with them and become, you know, friendly with them fast, lots faster than normal. But yeah, I grew up in Oak Cliff, and I still live in Dallas. We live right now off of Royal Lane and 75, and right behind us is a fairly wealthy neighborhood. Some of the business that we do partnered with another company, a white glove service. We deliver fine art and antiquities. That's the area we deliver to. We were just there this morning, right behind where we live. Gigantic house, coffee table that I can't imagine they spent ridiculous amounts of money on. And we had to put on gloves and booties and a team of 4. And the top of this coffee table had to at least weigh 400 pounds. And so it was this thick, 3 inches thick, solid glass, 4 feet by 3 feet. It was ridiculous. And our job is to show up with smiles, pick it up like it doesn't weigh anything, walk in with a smile, and wait for them to say, okay, move it here. Okay, move it there. Try it in. Man, I almost lost it this morning because we have to have our masks on. And I was like, oh my God, I'm about to faint. I can't breathe. I had to step away, man, because the thing was so heavy. But yeah, that's our backyard, is that area. We do a lot of business back there. We do a lot of business downtown. DFW is, we're trying to expand, and we were doing really well as a company before Corona. We were taking on a lot of business, lots of artists, working with new businesses, getting into the social media realm, the website realm. And we hired a few people to join the team, and then Corona hit, and it literally every week was, you know, more and more bad news. And, you know, team meetings became, God, I'm so sorry. We'll have to reconnect with you at another time. You know, those conversations are hard. Down to, it's me and my office manager and my art coordinator, and that's it. We went from like 7 to 3, but we're holding the fort down. And what's important to me is being able to keep the space here at Oak Cliff, surviving this pandemic, and being available when it's over to pick up business and be here to do.
That's it.
That's all I can do. You know, that's my mission. That is my mission.
You know, Frankie, you just said a mouthful right there, and I think that's really, really real. And I think you probably spoke to a lot of people right then about the difficulties that the arts are going through right now. So I appreciate you being very candid about that and how difficult that it has been in the past few months and what it has meant, you know, with having to downsize and all of that. So that is, I thank you for sharing that. I think that's going to let a lot of people know that they are not alone right now, and it's real out there.
It is real, and a lot of my clients are dealing with it too. And so, you know, CEOs, business owners, they're calling me, I'm calling them, and it's the same conversation. You know, one of my clients had to let 60 people go, and he was in tears, man. And it was sad because that's 60 lives that relied on that job to take care of their families. And so it was, but again, what put it into perspective for me, that conversation was, he said, Frankie, if I don't do this, we lose the company. But if I do this, we're able to salvage the company, get through the pandemic, and then we can hire them back. And that resonated with me. That's a business decision. It's one of those that you have to sit back and pray about. And that's where I'm at. I'm just like, I have to salvage. I have to keep this office in Oak Cliff. That is my mission. Because when all this is over, at least I have this that we can build from. Because we can always hire back those individuals, and they'll come back willingly, and we can pick up, hopefully, where we left off for the most part. But it is real out there, ladies. It is tough.
It's real.
It's really tough.
It is.
I have no doubt. But I appreciate your commitment to making sure that you stay in the community where you grew up, and put a business there, and making sure that it's there once we come through this. So that you have my kudos and my snaps for that. I'm gonna quit talking because I see Quo has a question. I can always tell.
Not so much a question, but I mean, there's so much in what you just shared, just all of it, even from the beginning and wanting to get away from Oak Cliff. I also grew up in Oak Cliff. I went to charter schools, but I also grew up in Oak Cliff, and just what it means for all of us as we get older and wanting to kind of get away and experience something different, but then how we are called back with purpose to those very places that we wanted to leave, and then how we embrace those things as part of who we are, and then how we use that to continue to connect with others, both in business and in personal life. And then in the comment about having to make those tough decisions as leaders about the organization, that would not be a tough decision if you didn't care about your people.
That's right.
If you didn't care about your people, it wouldn't be a tough decision, because it'd be very clear. It's like, okay, these people are numbers, this is staff, and we cut this way. But that is how organizational leaders who also have that empathy, who have that very real connection with those with whom they work, those are the decisions that we have to make, and those are the ways that we have to consider what we do. And I respect that, because it's not an easy decision to make. But in addition to that, how we focus on mission, and then how we continue to kind of grow when the mission is the community, knowing what our role is for the community itself, because it's bigger than just, it's bigger than Quo, it's bigger than Kristian, it's bigger than Frankie. This is what my organization means to this community. And it's a beautiful thing to be able to sit and talk and have that conversation with somebody. So thank you for that.
I appreciate it. I'm proud of what we've been able to build. It's not easy. And a lot of people that I do meet, artists especially, they dream of this grandiose time when their art will lead them to like their own studio or their own gallery. And you'll hear things throughout my career. Man, I want to do what you do. I want to be just like you. And at first it was kind of flattering. It was like, oh yeah, man, okay, yeah, thank you. And after a while, it became my obligation to say, you have to be a special individual to do this. This is not easy. I have sacrificed so much to fill this role and to be here, and I learned this from a talk, to be available. Availability is what it's all about, because whether you fail or you succeed, are you going to be there tomorrow to pick up the phone again? And that's what it's about, availability. Will you be available again tomorrow for that person that needs to hear from you? And so who knows who that person is, but once you wrap your head around that and realize that's the role that you're filling, it's not a job, it's a life. It's a life. This is my life.
Yeah.
Art is my life. Being here for these artists is my life. Being back here in Oak Cliff and unlocking my door at 9 a.m. every day so the neighborhood sees me here, locking it up at 5 p.m. every day so the neighborhood sees me here. We have no bars on our doors. They respect us. They take care of us in the neighborhood. People have been broken in around us. They don't mess with us. We're protected. And because they see that we're important to the community, they see their kids from the neighborhood coming in, working with us. They see the art all over our walls outside that we've made with these kids. And so that's a role that, it takes a special individual to fill, because that individual has to relate to this community. And I happen to be that person. Like Quo said, it was a calling, and it was like, well, someone else would do it. Then you sit back and
Yeah.
think about it, you're like, but damn, I fit that profile. And then, well, someone else, man, someone else has more time. And then you sit back, you're like, wow, that sounds like they're describing me. And so at the end of the day, it was like, damn, it's got to be me that goes out there. And the way it happened, um, I never imagined. So I have owned brick and mortars, or I've been part owner to brick and mortars in the past. I was partnership with the gallery in Dallas between 2010 and 13. And it was downtown. And so I really got some hands-on experience in being part owner to a gallery, and what it was like to work with artists and have that mission of selling art, Dallas art. We lost it because we could not compete against social media. Social media began to educate the consumer that, you could buy directly from the artist by reaching out to them. So we couldn't, no matter what we did to try to secure contracts or explain, an artist is an artist, and you just can't stop them from going, hey, I made a sell on Instagram. Well, why didn't you bring it through us? And so it just killed us. We couldn't compete. So we lost it. And when we did, it was a hard hit. And I took a break from the art world for a while because my dream was to own a gallery. I had accomplished that dream, and I thought, like, that didn't work out. So I focused on my family, and we had some grandkids born, and we got 5 grandkids now.
Yeah.
But we took some time, 3 years, to focus on the family and to just better myself as a business person and really refine how I was going to approach my way back in, and then define what areas I was going to focus on. And I came back in and made some connections. And one of those connections was Kristian Jackson, who owns Color Me Empowered, which is a nonprofit. And at the time, she was working out of a spare room in a church here in Oak Cliff. And she's like, hey, man, I really want to do some type of fundraiser every year. And I hear you're really great at creating these kinds of concepts. So we worked together. And long story short, that fundraiser became a success. We're going in on our 5th year now, doing that, 6th year actually. And in the midst of that, her family purchased this building we're in. And so they had gutted it completely out. All that was standing were 4 walls, no roof. And she brought me in here and she says, hey, here's what we're going to do. Color Me Empowered is going to take half this building and office out of it. It's going to be our new headquarters. We're going to do our summer programming, our fall program, spring programming here, work with the kids. This is the area that we're working with. I want you to look at this space over here, Frankie. And so I went and I took a tour, and I was like, wow, that's amazing. And in my head, I'm thinking, God, this would be phenomenal to have. And she's like, what would you do? I'm trying to find the right person. What would you do in a space like this? So I threw together really quick on the spot an idea. And she's like, that would work. And I was like, yeah, this would be perfect for a person like that. She's like, well, why don't you put that together and you become that person? I'm like, no, I don't want to pay. I don't want that responsibility. I don't know. That's not in my plan. My plan was not that. She's like, no, Frankie, we could do this. And so we sat down, put a plan together. And that's how I moved into this place. We finished it out together. We put the AC in, we put the roof in, and the plumbing. We did it all here. We hired local people just from the neighborhood to help us finish it out. And everybody realized what was happening here. And one by one, they asked questions what we're doing. And, we're going to create programming for kids. And one side of it's going to be professional artists working out of a studio. And the other side's going to be programming for underserved kids. And that's what we've been doing the last 2.5 years here, right here in Oak Cliff.
It's funny how you think your path is going to go one way and then it
Yeah.
goes another way. And I say that because what I do want to talk about, we've heard you talk about, your business, but I want our audience to get to know, how you actually got into visual arts yourself as a visual artist. Because I know that, I know I get asked that question about, how I got into opera or how I got into the arts. So I want to ask that question of you because you're fostering young talent. You're working with artists. You're doing all these things, but you are an artist.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about your path.
Yes, I am an artist, and that's how I started, was an artist selling my paintings. That was my focus. But when I was growing up, I was about 4 years old, that I could remember watching TV and seeing an individual painting on what I found out later was canvas, and going and telling my mom, I want to do that. I want to do that. The movement, and I remember it was a movie, I don't remember which one, but she was painting this giant canvas and she was moving all over this canvas with paint and brush. At that point, I wanted to do that. And so my mother said from that time on, I always had a pen, a marker, a pencil, and a pad everywhere I went. And there's pictures of me everywhere, at barbecues, at get-togethers. I always had a pen and pad in every picture. I was always drawing. But what I grew up with was um, gang-related art. So basically, graffiti,
Tagging. Yeah.
tattoo art, Chicano art. That's what was around me. I didn't know that there were things called art museums. I didn't know there were things called art galleries. I didn't know you could make a living as an artist. All I knew was these are the images that I like drawing. And so I became known in the neighborhood as, this kid, he really draws well, man. All my friends were like, draw me this, draw me. Then I started drawing faces, and my friends, draw me, draw me, draw me. And so all through high school, I excelled at drawing and what was it, drafting. I took drafting for a little while. But because of the area I lived in, no matter how much I did not want to be a part of the gangs, they were all my friends. And so we were peer pressured all the time. Hey, you're gonna fight with us. You're part of the neighborhood. You can't say no. You meet us here. And it was just part of what I had to do as a person who lived in the neighborhood. And so I got caught up in it, and I was never gang related. I was gang associated, and it's just as bad, because when they need you, they call you. You got to be there. And so that got me into trouble. And I actually I started high school at Kimball High School, and then I was kicked out of Kimball for fighting and gang violence. And I ended up going to Skyline only because I had this skill of drawing, and the teachers and the principal knew that. They just felt like if we could pull him from this environment, he could probably do really well at this. My sister was already enrolled in Skyline, and that's why they felt like, well, maybe if he goes with his sister, he'll do better. And I was doing good. But those guys heard that I was from Oak Cliff, and those East Side boys wanted a piece of me, and it just started all over again. And so they kicked me out of that school, and they felt like, we're going to give this guy one more chance, because at that time it wasn't just being kicked out. The police, the school police, I forget what they called them, truant officers.
Yeah, truancy.
Yeah, they took a liking to me, and they were always trying to give me a heads up, watch your back, and people, this is what's being said, go home today, stay home. When they were kind of like, hey, you're either going to have to stay home and not go to high school anymore, or we're going to have to ship you to Seagoville, because now it's turned to death threats. And I had already lost 4 or 5 friends already. So this was back in the 90s, it was serious.
Yeah.
And so I went to Seagoville with Seagoville. So I went to school with all black kids at Kimball. Then I got to Skyline, and it was a mix. When I went to Seagoville, it was all white kids. So I was considered the colored kid, the bad kid from the bad neighborhood. He's here because he's in trouble, the gang kid. And so they were afraid of me immediately. And I had never felt that feeling ever of being afraid of. And so it took a while for me to just find a few folks that understood who I was, because inside, I'm just a nerd. I love math. I love science. I love to draw. I love music. I love the piano. I break it all down in my head, and it's art to me. And so once people realize that, they're like, man, this guy's really nice. And, you know, I was always interested in girls. And so at that time I was able to approach them, because in the hood, you had to be real careful. So here at this school, it was like everybody liked Frankie because he was the bad kid from Oak Cliff. And girls like bad guys. And so I had a lot of girlfriends. But I learned how to speak better. I learned manners. I learned that there were art galleries and art museums, and my art teacher at Seagoville really, you know, focused on me. And my math teacher, my geography teacher, because I was big. Anything that dealt with geography, history, I was like all about it, into it, just a nerd. And so they saw that, and I excelled, and I finally graduated. But I graduated high school and immediately went to work for a printing company. And while I was printing, I learned my color there. So it was mixing ink on the press, on the go, on the fly, 24/7. These machines never shut down. And so I would be on there mixing, and I got really good at it. My boss would tell me, man, you know, you got an eye for color. This is rare. You're going to make a lot of money in the printing industry. But on the back end of the press, while it was running, I'd be drawing. So he would come back there and see my drawings and be like, wow, dude, you got talent. You know, you should really consider pursuing this. So I heard that a lot of my life at that age. And I happened to run into an individual who was in the interior design world and who had gone to my church. And so he was, I think I could sell your work, Frank, but you need to turn it into paint on canvas. And so he kind of forced that evolution, sold my first piece in 1998. And after that, it was, you know, the rest is history, because I kept making more art, and I kept selling more art, and more designers were hiring me. And I was still working at the print company, but my boss was a musician. He was literally amazing. He could pick up the guitar, the flute, the trumpet, the piano, the drums. This man played everything. He excelled. He was meant to be in a band, but he had met a girl young, got her pregnant, and entered the printing business. And so he was like, Frank, let me tell you something. You know my story. I was 4 years in the printing company, maybe 5. He goes, if you don't quit printing in a year and pursue your art, I'm going to fire you. He's like, he says, I am not going to let happen to me happen to you. You are not going to go down this path. You're smarter than that. You're talented, Frank. Go out and pursue your career. And so he came to my very first art show, and he bought a piece from me at my very first show. And I quit within a year, and I entered the art business at 21. And I was doing well back in those days. It was good. They were good years. We didn't have social media, so I could name every artist that was selling work in the city. There wasn't a lot of them. But you didn't have these big collectives and, you know, these leaders in the community telling others that, hey, you could be creative, or here's a place for you to do that. It was just a small group of folks doing it. I was one of them. That's kind of how I started.
That's real cool. No, but it's there's so much in that. And, you know, one of the things of course, Quo and I, we work in education, in, you know, arts education, and to hear you talk about those teachers and those adults and those officers and all those people along the way trying to have your back, you know, and I know in the 80s and 90s, they were dismissing Black and brown kids. Yep. I mean, it's, you know, anytime you got into it, and they still do. They still do. And anytime, and especially when the you know, the Crips and the Bloods and all the gang stuff came up, and, you know, they immediately would just dismiss anybody who got into trouble, and nobody really, they would assign something to you already. They would put something on you already. You know, we saw kids 6 and 7 years old, and they would immediately identify them as saying they weren't ever going to do anything or be anybody, or going to succumb to their environment and all this kind of stuff. And so for me to hear you talk about how folks were like, look, you need to go pursue this. I mean, along the way, people were saying you need to go do this. I think that's
Yeah.
huge. And I also think it speaks to a lot of why you got pulled back to your neighborhood. I don't think that's a
Absolutely.
coincidence.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what you just said, it was my first day at Seagoville High School, and Mr. Mitchell was the principal. He was a black principal in an all predominantly white school. And so he had called me to his office immediately, and he sat me down, and we ended up being like best buddies. I'm not kidding. I was his office like helper. Every day I was in his office, but he took me in and he was like, "Listen, kid, I know you've had it rough. I know your story. He said, but you survived, and you're here for a reason." He goes, "I'm gonna make sure your ass stays out of trouble." He goes, "If anybody approaches you and wants to start trouble, you come see me." And he goes, "Now listen, we've already had them kids from Oak Cliff come up here looking for you." And I was like, "What?" Because that just like, well, how did they know I was here? He's like, "They were in the parking lot waiting for you. They heard you were here. I went out there. I told them, we don't know who you are, to get off my property, come back and call the police." And I'm like, "God, man." He's like, "Listen, Frankie, all you got to do is stay out of trouble, son. Stay out of trouble, and I will help you graduate." And he did. He made sure I was by his side. Every day I was in his office, and he was making me accountable, making me available. If I missed a day, he wanted to know where I was. I never skipped at that school because he made sure I didn't. And I passed, man, and I graduated. So thanks to Mr. Mitchell, man. If I could see him, I would absolutely thank him. But it's people like that that saw something in me that I didn't or couldn't see, that pushed me. And at some level, early on, I believe in my higher being, God, and I always felt like he was going to pull me out of the depths, because I had seen at a young age when I prayed that for some reason I was pulled away from that, or if I prayed for some reason I ended up over here and not there, and those friends that went passed away, and I was still alive. So we were avid. We believed in the Bible. We read the Bible. We were avid churchgoers growing up as a family, and I learned early that there were signs when you felt the divine. I felt it, and I'd be like, "Man, I better stick to this dude, because it sounds like I don't got any more chances after this." Because he would say that. He's like, "This is your last chance, your last chance." Oh, what you said, I meant to say that. He says, "This is your last chance, because most people like you, they'll just send them home and they'll just quit school."
Yeah.
He's like, because that's what they try to tell me to do.
Yeah.
Was just, you just stay home. You don't need to go to school. Just, but in other words, like, you're just going to be what you are, and we're going to give up on you. That happened to a lot of my friends. So he reminded me that could have been me. But yeah, absolutely.
There's just so much in that. I'm going to turn it over to Quo. Go ahead. I know there's some questions and commentary in there too, and I've been talking a lot. So please, by all means.
No, it's fine. I mean, Frankie, you're so dope.
Yeah.
Just in so many ways. And then I appreciate just the honesty of your journey and the power of your journey, because again, I was out there tagging stuff too. I had not been to an art museum. Just I was tagging everything. I had not been to an art museum, but I mean, look at us now. And it's not to knock where we come from. It's just a matter of saying where we are and where we're from, how it shapes who we are and what we do, and how it shapes the commitment that we have to our communities. Because there is a difference. There's a difference in how we work with our communities. There's a difference in the dedication that we have to our communities. And even in your saying that Principal Mitchell made sure that you were accountable and that you were available. And for that to be your mission now, right now in COVID, to be available, to open that door every day, close that place every day. And in knowing the amazing work that you do across age spectrums, right? You work with youth, but then you work with adult artists as well. So to have such a far-reaching influence and positivity that takes place is absolutely fascinating. So I'm just being a fan.
Can we expand on that a little bit? I'm sorry, I want to expand on that. the spectrum of which you work, because of course just talked about, we talked a little bit, you have alluded to this in the conversation, how you love working with kids. So can we talk about your approach with the community? Because I still want to go back to that, because I hear your roots and I hear you being back in Oak Cliff, and I want to talk more about that, because it has to influence the way you approach your work with the youth in your community, particularly being from there. So
Yeah.
can you talk about, the work you do with the youth, if you want to talk about some of the programs that you do, and then also working with adult artists as well?
Yeah. So I'll start that conversation with a little bit more about my background. So I live with drug addiction and alcoholism. It's prevalent in my family. Every man, my grandfather, my father, my uncles, cousins, avid drinkers. And, some people can drink and just be an alcoholic. Well, that's not me. So mine turned into drug addiction. So with that being said, I got into trouble and I spent time in jail. So it definitely affected my life. I've lost a lot because of that, not just years, but loved ones. My first wife, and learned lots of lessons. And while I was locked up, it provided. I was always a person that I was the first to admit that I was wrong. And I knew the consequences. I made the conscious choice. So when I did do time, I would sit and I didn't call anybody. I never called family. I didn't ask anyone for help. I just knew that this is the time I need to reflect why I'm here. And what happened was I would always connect with the other mates. And the way I learned that they would come to me, some of the roughest, the scariest people would approach me, because I just didn't have a fear. I came from a background, I survived things that others hadn't, and I didn't have this fear. So they would approach me and I would talk to them. I would start with the Bible first, because like I said, I avidly read the Bible and I knew what it meant. And a lot of times they would read it but not understand it. So we started there. And then it turned out, well, what do you do? And I would tell them, well, I'm an artist. Well, what is that? So I'd explain to them, and then I would start to draw, and then we would share that connection. And, I started just to talk to guys and let them know that this isn't the end of the road. And like, when you get out of here, you can take what we just learned together and apply that to your life. Let's start with your children. So we would write letters to their children, and I would tell them, give them hope. When their letters were about like, do this, do that, because remember, they're a product of their environment too. So I come from that same environment. When I would read their letters, I would say, no, that's not what you need to say right now. What you need to say right now is reassure them that you're going to come home soon. And when you do, things will be different, that your eyes have been opened, that you're sorry that you're putting them through this, except that you are responsible for this. And so that started happening, and I realized that, wow, not only am I enjoying this, but it's helping me, because how can I say those things and not live it? And this one time I got locked up for a very stupid reason. And it was one of those things where I knew I shouldn't have been there. I did it anyways. I'm smarter than that. I have way too much to lose. And that was just a reminder that Frankie got no more room for error. Like, he's telling me, I've helped you enough, but this is just a damn stupid decision, and I'm going to make you learn this lesson. So I got locked up for a little bit of time. And I immediately, started working with the guys. And there were some people in the cell around me that were some scary individuals that I had gone to high school with. And so they were part of the gang community. And so we started hanging out and talking. And some other scary individuals realized that, man, I want to know that guy. This guy knows everybody. I want to know this guy. So I woke up one morning, and I was about to leave the next day. And when I woke up, all these scary individuals were standing around my bunk. And I woke up, I'm like, what in the heck? What are y'all doing? And they said, come here, homie. We want to show you something. You're an artist. We wanted to make some art for you. So behind my bunk was a wall, and they had drawn a picture of me in the center of my wall. I got tattoos with my shirt off and all my tattoos, bald, and all around me was each of them. And they had drawn all around me. And I just thought to myself, wow,
Yeah.
that's how they see me, as
Mm-hmm.
this person, this center individual. And I just thought to myself, damn, I didn't realize that I was that person, that these scary individuals who, if they were just led in the right direction, could just be as accomplished as they were a dope dealer, a businessman. And so I just thought, man, this is, you know what? I made a mistake and I'm in here for a reason. And now on my last day, I know what my reason is. And I went out there and I told myself, I'm going to work for my community. And I know it'll pay off. It'll grow my business. I know it will if I just stay focused to it. So I work with kids here through Color Me Empowered. A lot of the kids here are dealing with the same things that I dealt with. So I can talk to them. I can reach out to them and I see the signs. And so I'll say things like, your dad thinks you should be working. Well, yeah, they don't know what this is, and they think it's, stupid, or they think it's dumb. And I'll tell them, well, that's okay. They can think that because they don't understand it. So let's show them something so that they can understand it. We'll create art, and we'll invite them over, and we'll talk to the parents and tell them that, hey, I make art as this is what I do for a living. Did you know that you could do that? And a lot of times the parents are not aware that you could make a living doing this. Not just like selling canvases, but you can paint cars. You can be a sign painter. You can paint homes. There's so many. You can be a carpenter. There's so many things that relate to being an artist that their kids can become. And when you begin to break it down like that to them, then they understand. And the next thing you know, I'm unlocking my door at 9 a.m. and I got parents trying to drop their kids off, going, "Frank, here, take them again." And so, yes, the kids are one thing. But I find that I make the most impression with the teenage boys. So I'm able to speak to them in a way where I'm getting through to them. And a lot of times we spent time at the Cottrell House when I first moved into this building. And we went in and I had worked with Color Me Empowered, Kristian, to paint a mural with the boys. So while I was in there, they're all gang related. And they stand for their hoods. So the first thing I told them was, we're not going to have any of that here. We're not calling neighborhoods. We're not calling colors. We're not drawing anything that relates to your neighborhood. You are locked up with the person next to you, and you each have won your right to be here. You guys have done something that put you here. But for whatever reason, these people think that you might have a chance if they pulled you out of that environment. That's what this house is here for. So we're going to paint a mural today. And I want you to draw, if you weren't here and you could be somebody, what would that somebody be? Draw that out on paper or write it out. And so they wrote it out, drew it out, and we painted this mural together. And when we were done, one of the kids said, "Hey, Frank, Mr. Frank, does that mean when I get out of here, I could say as a job description that I could paint?" And I said, "Yeah." And he's like, "Are you serious?" Like, he didn't realize that was something new to him. And I said, "Yeah, man, we taught you how to paint. Now you can go paint houses. You can get a job painting." He thought that was the most amazing news that he had ever heard. And I told another kid that, what he had painted was phenomenal. And he looked at me and he kind of gave me this weird look. And I was like, "I'm not making fun of you." He kind of like, what? Like bowed up?
Yeah.
I said, "I'm not making fun of you, little homie." I go, phenomenal means amazing. It means unbelievable. Like, what you just did was unbelievable. And he was like, "So I never heard that word." And I said, "Yeah, it's a real word." And he goes, "So where did you hear it?" And I said, I read it. He goes, "Well, what do you read?" And I said, "I read in books." And he goes, "So where do you get these books?" And I go, "At a library or a bookstore." I go, "Have you never been to a library?" And he goes, "No." 18 years old and never been to a library or a bookstore, because his whole life has been gangs and surviving. And so I told him, when you get out, you go to your library, you go to books. Libraries are free, bookstores are free, but you can buy books at a bookstore. And I wrote down exactly where he could go. But that just reiterates that these boys are not given the chance, just like I wasn't given.
Mm-hmm.
And there's still hope. You just have to take time and want to take time to get to know who they are and break those barriers down.
Yes.
And that's just something that I've been able to do, is to get through some of these kids who are, those tougher ones, they have an attitude. I was talking at a school once, and this kid in the back kept rolling his eyes and shuffling and making noise. And I finally stopped. I said, "Hey, what's your problem?" And he goes, "Man, this is all BS," thinking he was going to bully me. And I said, "Okay." I said, "Where are you from?" And I stood up in front of his face, and he kind of backed up. And I said, "Because I'm from Oak Cliff. You see what that says right there? That's West Side. Where are you from?" And he kind of backed down. He's like, he realized, though, he's just like me. And I said, "Are you from Oak Cliff?" "Yeah, I am too. I grew up right here off June Drive in Illinois." I said, "Man, I'm not trying to change you. I'm not forcing you to do anything. All I'm saying is give me 30 minutes of your time today. That's it. And you could be on your way." And he ended up coming to stay. I went to 8 classes, and he kept coming back to every one of them. But it's those kids that I've been able to connect to, that age group, and then the adults too. And usually the adults, it's through the similarities is the drug addiction. I can see it when they come into my door. They're artists, they're struggling. So I immediately break the barrier. You're here for a reason, and it's probably because you can't quit the dope, and they just start breaking down. I understand, I know what it's like, but you got to keep making art. Keep making art. Let's see what you're making. And so then I immediately focus on what they're doing, because with addicts, they could become addicted to anything. Yeah. It could be dope. It could be the gym. If they get clean and sober, it could be reading. It could be yoga. Whatever. They just get addicted. They have these addicted personalities. So I'll try to immediately turn from focused on their dope and all the bad they're doing, all the people they're hurting, to this beautiful art piece they just made. Can you do more of this? If I ask for 3 drawings in 4 days, you think you could do that? All right, here's my number. Here's my Instagram. Follow my Instagram. I want you to send me what you draw in the next 3 days. So at least for the next 3 days, I know they're focused on making art and not finding dope. Because Mr. Frank's going to call me, and he's going to have me come back to the studio on Friday, and he said he could put me in a show. And so you got to live up to all that. And I do find those opportunities for these young talented individuals. We put them into the fundraisers, the art auctions. If they have enough finished work, then we'll include them in group shows, and we'll include them in our little art circle community of artists that we work with. There's a few that I'm working with now that are struggling. My stepdaughter being one of them, and so I think she's a great poet, but she's struggling, man. And we've been fighting her disease for years and years, but she has 2 kids, and we ended up taking over that responsibility for her in hopes that she could pull her life together. So those are, struggles, realities that I live with that are a part of my everyday life. I don't make a big deal about it. I don't look for hey, do a write-up on me, look what I did. I just do it. I do it because part of staying clean and sober is giving back to your community, helping someone else. That's what AA is all about. You go and you listen to someone else. You're there for someone else. And that's what keeps me clean and sober and able to keep moving forward one day at a time, really. Yeah.
It's so dope. Like, there's just so much in there. It's so dope. The thing is that, this, we could wrap right here, honestly, because that you have said so much, that relating to your community, and that you identifying and seeing yourself in the people that you are working with, no matter the age group, but particularly teenage boys. That's so huge. And I think that is so important. And, I'm a country girl. I'm from the country. I grew up in a small town. And so, hearing you and Quo talk about your experiences and your background, on the flip side of that, for me, I always look, I go, well, the country kids, I want to introduce them to things as well, because there's not a lot of access, in those areas. So, it's just amazing to me how so many of the stories, no matter where you live or where you're from, that
Yeah.
connection between humans is so real, and people are can be walking right beside each other in a mall or something, and be dealing with the same thing, and be from completely opposite ends of the world,
Mhm.
and in completely opposite neighborhoods. And I think it's so important that we recognize those connections. And I just wanted to say that when you talked about those things, I think we forget that connection that we have as human beings. And like I said, I'm very inspired by what you're talking about, Frankie, today. And I know there are a lot of people who will be too.
I appreciate that. It's I've had to humble myself because I don't know if humble's the right word. I had to learn to live with my mistakes, and they're very embarrassing to me. Jail time's not something you want to go in and, hey, I own FGIII Fine Art Productions, and we're going to produce some of the finest art for you. That's not something that you want to share with people. But I've learned to own it. It happened. It is my past, and it lives and stays in the past as long as I want it to.
Yeah.
It's all up to me. If I choose the path that the direction I'm going in towards the future. So I've learned to use those experiences as stories to relate to individuals that need assistance or could use my help. It's not something I share with a lot of folks. It comes up every now and again with some of the artists that I talk to, and even then they're shocked and like, what? Oh my God. But I remember talking to one of my favorite artists in the city of Dallas. He's a celebrity artist now. He sells to celebrities across the world. And I had gotten locked up and got out. I was so embarrassed. This was 2010, and he was on his way up. And I remember he sat me down for tacos, and he was like, hey, listen, homie, don't be embarrassed, man. It happens to people. Like, people get pulled over for drunk driving. It happens, man. It happened to be you. He's like, but you survived it. Because let me tell you a story. Did you know that I did time for 3 years? And I was like, what? What? You what? And he was like, yeah, I did 3 years. I'm like, wait a second. You did prison time. And he was like, yeah. I go, but you're a celebrity famous artist. He's like, I did prison time. And it got me to focus on what I was here to do, which is make art. It's those stories that other people relate to me that allows me to not be so embarrassed to share some of my stories. And I just wanted to say that because I was thinking like, dang, should I have said I was locked up? But it does make it, it allows me the connection with some of these individuals that I'm working with. Yeah.
Very cool. There's just so much in that. Quo?
In all of it. I love, well, of course, I'm a fan always. But what I love most is the way in which you've been able to connect with people through the arts. And it's not the art, right? It could be anything, but it's the fact that you are seeing others as human beings, that
Yes.
you're not trying to change anyone, that you're not coming with the, oh, art saved my life, art can save lives attitude. It's a matter of the connection to human, the I see you, the I understand your story, or here's my story, the sharing of your narrative, and the very honest and vulnerable and powerful things that come with that. That is what I love the most among everything else, especially just how you bring yourself, your authentic self to your work, to the
Yes.
work that you do when you're working with clients, but also, again, when you're working with youth, when you're working with students, how you share your journey and how you allow your journey to kind of push you forward, how you allow your journey to keep you accountable, but then how you own that, like you said, how you own it, and it's a part of you, it's a part of the amazing work that you do, the very necessary work that you do. It also provides the opportunity for us, again, to see each other as human beings and to embrace all of the beautiful things that are in our past, those things that create who we are now, the things that propel us to go forward. So
You know, I listened to a podcast by Talib Kweli, and I don't know if you guys listen to it, but it's amazing. He's an amazing artist, one, but a lot of the individuals that he has on his show are um, products of their environment from the 80s and the 90s. And so when you hear these amazing, phenomenal celebrity status individuals like Red Method Man and Ice
Mhm.
Cube and Common, and you're hearing them talk, you know, each of them have a past that they're ashamed of. But those decisions were made because they were still part of that environment. Most of it is violence in the gang or reference to women in their music. But it's you can't erase it. It's on that album.
Mhm.
It's there to stay.
Mhm.
Yet they get up every day and they face the limelight and they figured out ways to move forward from it. And when they're asked questions about it, their responses are like, wow, wow, that's, you know what, I don't feel so bad now. And what I've learned to do is to use those experiences. I've been forced to use those as like, either I'm going to focus on them, they're going to be bad, and I'm going to hate that part of my life. That means so many years of my life I can't think about. I have to somehow make disappear in my mind, or I can flip it and use it and say, those are the years that I learned to become this person that I am today. And I
Mhm.
felt like that was a better way to approach it. But yeah, I'm constantly trying to hear other stories from people that I admire, and Talib's podcast, man, you guys got to hear it. It's phenomenal. He has interviewed some of the most amazing people that walk the earth, and to hear their humble approach to um, their craft or their communities and how they're actively working in their communities under the radar, it really makes me um, want to do more. And a lot of these people, it's not in the press.
Mhm.
You don't
Oh.
hear about it, but they're out there doing it, and
Mhm.
that's what I appreciate about it. That's the people to people connection, and
Mhm.
that is what I thrive on, and that's what means the most to me. I don't care about any of the fame or the glory. That I learned the lessons long ago that means nothing. What I care about is the connection to people, meaningful connections that I could at least say that my time on this earth was not wasted. And although I've made some bad decisions that wasted parts of my life, I was able to use that as something that I could reflect on and say, hey, man, I'm proud of the life that I've lived. You know, that's what's more important to me.
Frankie, that's a word. We're going to wrap there, okay? Because I don't know that we can say anything else. Quote, this is the time we go to positive notes, and I think we have a ton for this episode. My word.
Positive notes. Um, so many. So positive notes, even in the very beautiful things that Frankie has shared with us in this time with us today. Be mindful of the power of narrative. Be
Yes.
mindful of the power of the stories that we have and the stories that we tell, the stories that we hear, and how once we hear those stories, there's no going back, right? There is a part of us that should connect so that we take those stories with us as we move to connect with others.
Thank you all so much for joining us. Please, please, please continue to, walk faithfully, be brave, and of course, please join us again for our next episode. Thank you so much, Frankie, for being with us.
Hey, I appreciate you ladies both having me.
And Frankie, for those who want to find you, where can they go?
Oh, I'm on Instagram. And I'm on Facebook. um, you can always find me there. You can message me. I definitely make an effort to get back to everybody. If an artist reaches out, I've never said I'm too busy or no, your work isn't what I'm interested in. I always make time. Come see me at my office. Schedule a call. I at least want to hear what they have to say or what's on their mind if they're in the art community. So you can always feel free to reach out to me.
Thank
Yeah.
you
Thank
all.
you, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.